Attention getter, man.
Okay. It being 11 a.m., I will call the meeting of the Engineering Operations Committee and a special meeting of the West Basin Board of Directors to order. And we will start with a determination of quorum. So, Mr. Assistant General Manager, could you see if we have a quorum?
Happy to do so. Director Harold Williams,
Here.
Chairman Desi Alvarez,
Here,
Director Don Deere,
Here.
Director Gloria Gray, and Director Scott Houston. Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
okay. So moving on, we're in public comment. Any member of the public making a comment today?
Mr. Chairman, we have not received any requests for public comment, although I do see that we have a number of attendees here virtually. If anybody would like to make a public comment, now would be the time to do so. If you can please raise your virtual hand and we will call on you. Mr. Chairman, I do not see any requests.
Okay. So then the next item up on the action calendar, the first item that we'll be considering today is Agreement W 2912, Amendment for On-Call Pump Repair Services. So Mr. Assistant General Manager, would you like to present that item?
Happy to do so. This item will be presented by Jason Kung, our Operations Analyst 2. Take it away.
Thanks, DJ. Good morning, directors, and happy Friday. West Basin Municipal Water District entered into an agreement with Bonds Industrial Repair Company in March of 2020, following a competitive bid to maintain and replace critical assets such as pumps, mixers, and submersibles. West Basin has utilized specialty services to conduct rapid as-needed repairs, rebuilds, and replacements. These assets are vital to maintaining recycled water production, and responsive on-call services have been and will continue to be critical for conducting repairs in a time-efficient manner. West Basin's current agreement for on-call pump repair services is set to expire on June 30th, 2023. With cost of materials and parts significantly increasing over the past 2 years, the original contract amount has not proved to be sufficient for the remaining 4 months. Currently, to better serve West Basin and its customers through minimizing asset downtime, staff is working to reconfigure the on-call pump repair services contract to be jointly combined with the on-call motor repair, rebuild, and replacement services contract in July 2023. This effort to combine both contracts will allow West Basin and its contractors to act swiftly for urgent pump and motor work, reducing the coordination needed between third parties, and therefore reducing unnecessary recycled water process downtime. Because the motor and pump are mechanically connected to each other and electrically connected to a variable frequency drive or a starter of some sort, any efforts requiring disassembly of the pump or alignment of the two components or electrical disconnection or connection or rotation testing, they all require close communication with all parties, including our partners Veolia, to ensure a seamless process. You can imagine with multiple contractors involved with scheduling crane rentals and equipment drop-off, it's definitely could be minimized by merging the two motor and pump contracts into one. Until the new joint contract is brought to the board for recommendation, and in the meantime, staff analyzed the burn rate for the past 3 years at roughly $15,000 per month. Combined with upcoming and anticipated pump refurbishment efforts, analysis noted an additional $115,000 will be necessary for the remainder of the contract. Table 1 below, I believe, is on page 4 of your packet, details the anticipated costs, the remaining unallocated contract amount, and the total funds needed, including a 25% contingency. Alternatively, if additional funds are not approved by the board, any future pump work will be delayed and will have to be bid individually, thereby further increasing potential downtime and potential impact to recycled water production. Thus, I'd be happy to read the recommendation and answer any questions you might have. That the board authorize the general manager to amend the agreement W2912 with Bonds Industrial Repair Company to add funds in the amount of $115,000 for the same term, March 25th, 2020 to June 30th, 2023, for a total not to exceed amount of $615,000. Thank you.
Thanks for that report. Director Williams, do you have any questions?
Well, since the general manager is not here, I'd like to hear from Barkev. Is this a fair assessment?
Good morning, directors. Yes, it is a fair assessment. And I think it's a good strategy for us for this just next few months before we put it out to bid again and come back with an award, maybe in 3 to 4 months.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, Director Deere, do you have any questions?
No, no, thank you.
Okay. I have one question. In terms of the fiscal impact, the funds for this are available in the current budget.
That's correct.
So the recommendation going forward is to amend Vaughn's contract, and that the funding for it will come from existing operating budget. That, like to make a motion?
Just to clarify, Dr. Alvarez, for the fiscal impact, or if I'm wrong, Jason, the funding would come in from 2 sources. 1, operating budget, 2, capital. When the asset, certain times we replace a capital asset. And in that case, the funding would come from the capital budget versus the operating budget. So we have 2 of them there listed in the fiscal impact.
That's correct.
Yes, you do.
One follow-up question. Does this type of work, how many contractors, do we get a lot of contractors bidding on this? The set number because of the type of work it is.
Sure. It's a great question. In the past for this particular contract, when we went out for an RFP on the pump repair contract, we had a number of proposers, but our setup for the on-call contract is just one contractor for the time period.
We select one
We
contractor,
select one, yes.
but we, as part of the qualifications, we consider multiple,
Correct.
right?
Okay,
Yeah, we consider
all right,
multiple
thank you.
vendors.
I would think that you have multiple parties that would do this. It's a pretty routine thing. In terms of maintaining motors and pumps and so on.
Absolutely. What we try to aim to do, especially for this upcoming new contract that will bring recommendation to the board in May, May, is we want to take care of the competition up front. That way, you can imagine with these particular repairs or refurbishment efforts, it's not quite clear exactly what needs to be repaired when a motor or pump experiences. Yeah, so we'd like to take care of the competition up front and then do the assessment and then figure out, what needs to be replaced or fixed. And then that way we have the best price at that time to do so versus, transporting the pump or motor back and forth between different vendors.
Okay, but this extension is just through this fiscal year and we will be going out to bid and then you're gonna merge the two.
Correct.
Thank you.
With that, I guess I'll move it this, be forwarded to the full board.
I can,
Then let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is award of agreement for construction service. Filter clause at the Etsy Little plant. So Assistant General Manager, would you?
Happy to do
That
so.
item?
Mr. Chairman, the next item, as you mentioned, is item 5B. And for this report, we do have John Benner, our engineer 1.
Thank you. Good morning, directors. So as you may remember, we presented about the soil handling system several times now. In November, on November 16th last year, we presented an action item to award the procurement of 280 filter cloths and associated equipment for the filter presses at Etsy Little. At the time, we mentioned that this was the first half of a two-part installation, and we would be coming back to the board with an installation contract. This is that installation contract. So I'll just briefly read through the summary. In July 2022, West Basin Municipal Water District completed inspection of existing plate and frame filter presses within the solids handling system at the Edward Sealand Water Recycling Facility. This inspection assessed the condition of both PFFPs, and it was conducted by a representative of the original manufacturer of these presses. The inspection at the time found that at least 2/3 of the filter cloths required replacement, and these filter cloths are critical components of these plate and frame filter presses. Their condition, we believe that by replacing them with new filter cloths, we can reduce the haulage costs that we're paying currently to Waterway Solids by up to $76,000 per month. So we then put in for a procurement award for it to procure 280 filter cloths to replace all 280 of these. And that was awarded in November 2022. April. The second part of that is that we now need to procure a contractor to install all 280 of these filter cloths. At the time, we estimated in that previous presentation, we estimated this contract would be around $75,000. And after going out for bid, we have a low bid contract or a low bid amount of $69,320, 15% contingency for a not to exceed contract amount of $79,780. So with that, I will read the recommendation and take any questions. Recommendation is that the board authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with J.R. Phelan Construction Company for construction services on the solids handling improvements project in the amount of $69,320 plus a 15% contingency of $10,398 for the total not to exceed contract amount of $79,718.
Okay, thank you. Director Williams, any questions?
Yes, thank you. Is this an on-call,
No, this went out to.
Went out to bid? And how many bidders did you get?
We had two bidders.
Just two?
Just two. We did have a third bidder, but unfortunately their bid arrived after the deadline due to a problem with their courier.
What?
The courier they hired to deliver the bid, it was delayed, so unfortunately it arrived after the bid date.
To do business.
Hard deadline.
That deadline is real, right? That's all I have.
Do you have any questions? Okay. I have just a follow up in terms of the budget on this. It's stated in here that the funds for this are in the existing budget.
Yes.
Okay. So the other item under the fiscal impact, it refers to capital contribution that's been made by the refineries. Are we accessing that for this item, or are we segregating those for the time being?
Director, initially we were considering this project part of the capital, in which case we would be accessing or applying these costs to the refinery funding, because the refinery funding are paying, they're paying fixed costs against the capital project. However, at a previous committee meeting, we talked about pulling those costs from the capital and putting it on the operating budget, in which case they won't be applied against the fixed costs coming in from the refinery.
I was going to argue that this seems to be one of these ongoing maintenance items that we're going to have, and it needs to be treated that way. So thank you for the clarification. Any other questions?
I haven't. And then,
So with the understanding that it will come out of the operating budget, I would move this forward to the board. You concur?
I concur.
Okay. Can't believe we're making progress here. Good, Rick. Next item is item C, procurement of barrier reverse osmosis membrane replacement for trains 2 and 9. So, Mr. Assistant General Manager, would you like to introduce that item?
I would be happy to do so. For this presentation, we do have Susanna Lee, our Senior Operations Engineer. And this does begin on packet page 11 for those of us who are, or for those of you who are following online.
Jay, and good morning, directors. As EJ mentioned, this is in regard to the procurement of membranes for 2 of the barrier trains. As stated in the package, there are a total of 6 RO trains that are dedicated for the barrier production. And 2 of these trains, trains 2 and 9, membranes were installed in 2017. And based on the normal average useful life of 5 years, they were originally due for replacement last year. But since 2021, with the Hyperion sewage spill upset, barriers were turned off for more than 6 months. And so staff made a determination to delay that procurement until this year. And the membranes for 2 and 9, the current performance have indeed indicated that they are in need of replacement. And so therefore, staff had sent out for invitation for quote in January. And for your information, for all the membrane procurement with West Basin, they've gone through a 5,000 hour of pre-qualification testing. The last testing was done back in 2018. And based on that pre-qualification test results, there are 3 qualified RO suppliers for this low pressure barrier membrane procurement. As stated on page 12, the scope included procuring the membranes and technical supports for installation, as well as for providing required warranty. On February 9th, West Basin received 2 quotes out of the 3 that were qualified. Only one of the received bids were deemed responsive, and that is from Toray Membrane USA. And Toray Membranes USA provided a unit price quote of $424 per membrane. And on table 3, as you can see, the last procurement that we received a $365 per membrane price. And this is a 16% higher compared to what we receive currently. So, I mean, the current bid price is 60% higher than the $365 per membrane price. And Toray acknowledges this significant increase is due to the inflation rates that we're receiving across the U.S. And that resulted in an increase in raw material costs as well as labor costs. That recommends that West Basin will procure the 1566 reverse osmosis membranes from Toray. And total procurement cost is $730,473.98. And as compared to the engineering estimate or the budget that I had put in originally as part of fiscal year 2021-22, this is about 3% difference. My original 21-22 budget, I included a $410 per membrane versus what we received, $124 per membrane. With that, I will read the recommendation that the board authorized the general manager to procure 1,566 reverse osmosis membranes and associated parts from Toray Membrane USA, Inc. for the installations at the ECL for a total not to exceed amount of $730,473.98, including freight costs and sales tax. I'd be happy to.
Okay, thank you, Director Williams. Any questions?
Chair,
Hello?
Mr. Chair, hi, I'm sorry, this is Director Gray. I have joined the meeting. I just want to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gray, and welcome to a meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Barkat,
Dr. Williams.
is this in order? Fair?
It definitely is, Dr. Williams. We always try to make sure we have all the equipment necessary for us to produce as much as possible for the barrier system. The membranes need to be replaced, and this is we went through an appropriate process to select the vendor that we are proposing to recommend this contract for.
So this testing that is done?
As a pre-qualification measure, yes, there is a testing that gets done. They have to pass a 5,000 hour performance test, if you will. Last time we did the testing was 2018, I think. Yes, 2018, and we feel like that testing is still suffices to this day.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, Director Deere, do you have any questions? Director Gray, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, just a couple of follow-ups. The membranes get periodically replaced. What's that cycle approximately?
5 years.
Every 5 years? Thank you. So based on that, I think we had a discussion about this at a previous meeting, that again, it's kind of an operational expense that should be budgeted every 5 years for replacement of the membrane. Pretty much a regular routine type of activity. And the other question I had was on the advertisement for this. You advertised it through the Mercell system, but was it also advertised through just the West Basin website, where we're putting everything out there for people to look at?
We always advertise on the Mercell, but to answer your question further, because we wrote the specs that has the based on the pre-qualification manufactured, only most likely the 3 vendor will be able to bid on this quote specifically, because it's written specifically on.
We're the only pre-qualified vendors, so you could have just sent them the invitation to bid since they were the only ones. But since it's mentioned about the Mercell that was put out to bid, we also have a website that we talked about having everything advertised there, and then we can also, as a secondary advertisement, do the Mercell. So I'm just asking to make sure that we do put things up there for the general public to see, because the easiest way to do it is for people that access the website and just click on that link. It comes up.
And I do know that we have Joanna Garcia Singleton, our contracts administrator,
Okay.
here virtually. I don't know, Joanna, if there's anything that you can share related to this. I don't know if it was placed on our website. I do know that there's been an effort to do so on other items.
Hi, good afternoon, board. This solicitation actually was not put on our website. The logic behind that was because it was for pre-qualified vendors only. We did advertise it through Mercell, so that's how the pre-qualified vendors were able to submit their quotes, was through Mercell. But yeah, we did not post it on the website. We do post all other solicitations on our website, though.
Well, it'd be a good idea, just so that the public or any other vendor that in the future wants to become pre-qualified understands that these opportunities do come up. Pre-qualification limited it to the 3 vendors, and technically we just had to notify the 3 to submit a bid. But if we're gonna advertise and we're gonna be consistent, when we talked about it making it easier for the public in general, to become aware of these things, it should be up on our website under the bidding opportunities page, so everybody can see it. And then, if you need to also put it on the Marcel, that would be the secondary advertising.
Thank you. We
Um,
will do that moving forward with all of our solicitations.
Okay, thank you. And then regarding the budget on this, it does say that the West designated funds and reserves will be used, so it's existingly budgeted. Right?
So the membranes were part of the 2021-22 budget, but by the time we decided to delay the procurement, the 2022-23 budget had already been approved, so it didn't make it into the 22-23. So therefore, as stated in the memo, it will be taken out from the reserve this year.
Okay, so coming out of the operating reserves. Okay, with that, any additional comments?
I just concur with you on, I would
Yep,
move this forward.
Okay, so we'll move this recommendation forward with that understanding. Okay, with that, we move on to the information calendar. And the first item up on the information calendar is an update on the Palos Verdes Recycled Water Pipeline project.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee and board, we do have this item as item 6A in the information calendar. And for this presentation, I believe we have Wendell, our manager of engineering.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, board members. I'm here this afternoon to give you an update on the PV, or Palos Verdes Recycled Water Pipeline Project. If you would look at page 188 in your agenda package under agenda item 6A. This item is for information on the status of the bidding process for the pipeline. As mentioned, the bid solicitation package was issued on December 15th, 2022. It was advertised on Marcel, LinkedIn, and the district's webpage. On January 5th, 2023 at 11 a.m., a non-mandatory pre-bid meeting took place. And this was via MS. Okay, and there were 6 contractors that participated in that pre-bid meeting. Bids were originally due on July 17th, 2003. As required to comply with the goodwill effort of a DBE program, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, listed on the California State Water Clean Water Revolving Fund Agreement, requires contractors to advertise for 30 days in publications. Thus, the request to extend the time for bid submittal was received, and the time was extended through February 14, 2023. At the advice of council, staff is not providing a recommendation for this item at this time. The information information board item was prepared or submitted prior to the date of obtaining the bids, and thus we will be only announcing the results as an action item in the board meeting on February later this month. If I have any questions at this time, I'll be glad to answer them for you.
I don't have it.
Okay, Director Deere, do you have any questions? Director Gray, any questions? Okay. So we did open bids on February 14th. So you have received bids. How many bids did we receive?
We received 3 bids.
And it appears that we're not being presented with the bids today, but the recommendation that you're making is, or that you said would be that you will be presenting it for award at the board meeting?
Correct.
Okay. I don't see the justification really for not bringing that information today so that we could review the bids and move this item as a recommendation to award on the, at the next board meeting. There's plenty of time to do that. There's 10 days between now and the next board meeting. So I would just in the future say, if you have opened the bids, then we should be presented with that information and it should be brought to the appropriate committee prior to it being moved forward with the board.
Mr. Chairman, and I believe Wendell Johnson mentioned this, we did inquire with legal counsel earlier today, and at the advice of counsel, because of the Brown Act, because it was agendized as an information item and the item was submitted, I believe legal counsel suggested that we not bring those forward at this committee.
Well, as an information item, I would say that you could present the information of the bid opening and say, here's the bids that were received and all of that. That's still information. And I'm not quite sure I agree that it's a Brown Act violation. Kind of just the opposite in arguing for transparency. Any information that's available, anybody member of the public could have attended the bid opening. And at the bid opening, you identified and read out the bids, not the detailed bid breakdown, but said, bidder X amount, bidder Y amount, etc. So it would be appropriate to say, we did open the bids, we received 3 bids, and here are the bid amounts, etc. Which is my next question. What were the bids?
We received three bids, and the bids ranged from $8,975,993 to $11,138,950.
Okay, and what was the engineer's estimate for this project?
The engineer's estimate was $7,239,880.
So we were at $7,239,000 and the low bid is $8,975,000. So it's over $1.7 million higher than the engineer's estimate.
Correct.
And in terms of the funding, there's no analysis here as to how we're gonna pay for the entire project. I understand that in the fiscal recommendation, you talk about the different funding sources, et cetera. But this is one component of 2 components of this project is for completion of the Palisades Recycled Water Pipeline project. We have the pipeline component, which is what we're looking at right now, and then we have the pump station, which I think is out to bid or will be going out to bid shortly.
Correct.
So the overall budget estimate, are we still going to be okay? Look at the funding summary and then staff report to show that the revenues are currently showing $14,874,000. That down includes and so let me back up. Did we already award the construction management for this, or is that something that's still coming up?
The construction management was awarded last year,
Okay.
2020.
So in terms of all of the expenses, are we gonna be within the $14.8 million that now we have budgeted for the project? Because that includes the design, construction management, and construction.
Staff will be reviewing the budget and making that determination prior to the recommendation coming before this board at the end of the month in February.
Director,
Yes,
just to clarify, maybe it'll answer your question. The 14.874 shown on table A, that's based on the engineer's estimate,
mhm,
the latest bids that we have. So like you said, there's an extra 1.7 million and
just on this
change
component.
would be added to this $8 million, if you will. That addition is not included in table A because this report was prepared before we received the bids.
Two concerns that I have with respect to that, I don't know if any other board members do, but when things are going over budget, it would be nice to know where all of the funding is going to come from and how that's being addressed. And that should be done prior to presenting it on our board meeting. The assumption at the board meeting is that everything's been reviewed and at least there's a certain level of concurrence that the background information has been disclosed to the appropriate committees, et cetera. That's not the case here. This item, I realize that we delayed the Engineering and Operations Committee date. So this item was on the E&O Committee agenda or proposed agenda had we had it at a regular time. And I guess that would have been February 8th prior to the bid opening. But if the intent was to award it this month following the bid opening, that process is something that I have a concern about, especially when you have a significant overage in terms of the cost of the project and how that financing is going to be addressed. And that those items should be discussed, and doing so at the board meeting actually puts a little bit of stress on some board members because it's, well, we have to act, we have a bid that we've opened, et cetera. And I guess at this point, most of the bid award here probably has a 60 or 90-day provision in it. And I feel more comfortable if this is brought back to committee so that we can review the entire budget and the anticipated costs also of the pump station. And then move it forward for recommendation to the full board. So I would prefer that this be brought back for further consideration. There's no damage done by that. Bids are good for either 60 or 90 days. I don't know if this one's 60 or 90, but one or the other typically. Yes.
Or as we could certainly also discuss the funding right now too. Table that you see before you, this is kind of like the same table we had last, committee, and you can see the current breakdown of funding on the third column. All the different sources of funding based on the engineer's estimate. So based on a couple of months ago, we showed this to the committee. West Basin's portion for the project is $2.8 million. So then the question becomes, now the bids are coming in and the first bid for the pipeline came in higher. The question becomes where would the extra funding come from? Is it an increase from West Basin's portion or an alternative? And that's where discussion, we can have a discussion with the board of what the board may desire, of what we want to do. If there's any feedback from the board about what where you think the funding should come from, we can have that discussion today, or we can bring it back as mentioned and have a discussion the next committee.
My preference is that we kind of go through and follow a consistent process and that this be reviewed by the committee before it goes to the board, and there's no urgency here. The bid is either good for 60 or 90 days. I'm not quite sure what the bid documents call for, but
Ben, if you're still with us, how many days are the bids good for?
The validity is for 45 days, so that would take us to the end of March, which should be fine.
I concur.
okay. So with that, we'll revisit this next month.
We'll also be looking at, I'm assuming, have to reduce in the scope of work. In addition to looking at extra funding, that would also entertain the thought of reducing the scope of work.
That's some value engineering. Good point. Okay, next item is a update on the Juanita Melinder McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant Phase 2 expansion project.
This item is 6B. It does begin on packet page 192. And for this presentation, my understanding is that we have Kevin Cullen, our engineer one here.
Okay, Kevin.
Chairman Alvarez, members of the committee and board, I'll be starting the presentation on packet page 196. Like to follow along. Today I'll be providing an overview of the project status. I'll begin with a few highlights and recent accomplishments. Talk about the PLA numbers, where those stand. Highlight some of the schedule delays that the project is currently facing, and then bring the conversation back towards an overall budget status and current standing. Next slide, please. January was a very busy month for the project. We came off a few weeks of rain late in December, so we were happy to get going again. You can see on the left-hand side, those are our custom engineered microfiltration control skids. So there are 6 of those, one at each end of the unit. There's 6 units. So in the middle of January, January 18th, we completed the factory acceptance testing of these units in Salt Lake City, where our construction management staff attended, had a successful test. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side, you can see we have 2 underground tanks at the CEMF unit, a backwash tank and a neutralization tank. You can see the cantilever pump there going in. In the middle photo, you can see the compressed air system for the instrumentation. And then on the right-hand side, you can see some piping connections where all the piping is being assembled. Next slide, please.
What page number is that?
Director Deere, that was page 198. We're on page 199 now.
Good, okay, I'm there. Thank you.
On the left-hand side, you can see the installation of our grading that went over the pipe trench. And then on the right-hand side, following the rain, we had actually formed up all the formwork for the CMU wall footing. We have a new perimeter wall that's going in on the south and west sides of the property. It's a 5-acre facility, so they're pretty long stretches of CMU wall. Unfortunately, the rains washed out the trenches that were all nice and cleaned up. So we had to go back in and clean out the formwork and recompact. That's what you can see on the right-hand photo. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side, you can see the CMF structure. A significant amount of the above-grade piping is being installed, and those 2 big pipelines shown there are the feed piping and the filtrate piping. On the right-hand side, you can also see another accomplishment in the past month or so has been the replacement of our auto strainers. With the new modules we have coming in, the new auto strainer requirement is a 200 micron auto strainer. Previously, we had a 500 micron auto strainer, so should filter out a lot more of the particulates. And that's where you can see the newly installed auto strainer on the right side. Next slide, please. And here you can see we did take delivery of our CMF skids and the module racks. So you can see 3 of them installed there on the left-hand side. And then again, on the right-hand side, you can see, fast forward 2 weeks from the previous photo, you can see the CMU wall and its footing are now in place. Next slide, please. So as an overview, where we stand with schedule, the contract duration for the project is 660 calendar days. To date, about 580 of those days have elapsed, so that's almost 90% of the schedule. On the cost side, the base contract was $21 million. So far to date, the contractor has earned about 12.7. This is only 60% of the budget, and this includes dollars spent through January. We do expect to see a significant jump in the month of February with taking receipt of those units. Probably a $3 to $4 million invoice from the contractor, so should bring us closer in line with the schedule. In terms of RFIs, there's been a lot of RFIs and a lot of coordination happening between the contractor, the design engineer, and ourselves, clarifying a lot of controls issues and working through some constructability issues, but making good headway there. And same with submittals, 297 to date, and we have processed 293. Next slide, please. In terms of the PLA is performing very well. For our goals, we have a local hire goal of 30%. Currently, we're sitting at 34.6%, so meeting that goal. On the at-risk side, we have a 5% goal, and we are currently at 7.2%. And then for apprentices, this is a GIR requirement of 16.67%, and we are almost at 23%. So in terms of the PLA, we are in very good standing. Next slide, please. So in terms of schedule, we are experiencing a slight schedule delay. Approximately 126 calendar days is the projected slippage. Our new projected completion date is August 31st. As we approach that date, some of the milestone dates we're working towards are commissioning. That's going to hopefully begin in May, and potential water deliveries through the CMF in July, with the ultimate completion of August 31st. Here's a list of some of the impacts that the construction schedule has faced. The majority of the delay to date is related to procurement. There's no doubt there's been some challenges over the last couple of years. So I'd be happy to highlight or speak to any of these that we have here. But primarily, as I mentioned, the delay is related to procurement, specifically electrical components. PLCs, HMIs are very delayed with the semiconductor chip shortage. So the way we had the schedule laid out originally, it was a pretty aggressive schedule with the critical path going through the delivery of the CEMF. So that's where we are seeing the delays, is on the electrical components of the CEMF. We've taken delivery of it a little bit later than projected, but nonetheless, we're working to mitigate any further delays with the team. Next slide, please. Looking forward, some of the next steps, we are going through very detailed commissioning and integration planning currently. We do have a couple of remaining factory acceptance testing, mainly the HMIs and controls. We're also going to be moving into pulling of wire on site in the coming week. So inside the electrical buildings, we pulled most of the power control wiring, but site-wide, there's going to be a lot more of that coming up. Also have very detailed and specific meetings related to the integration and commissioning. So every 2 weeks currently, West Basin, Veolia, West Basin Operations, the contractor, the construction management team, and the design engineer, we're all getting together and working through the integration challenges ahead, and really starting to lay out the roadmap for how we're going to get through commissioning. Looking forward, on the CM team, we're going to be onboarding an electrical / INC specialist. Currently, we have inspectors that are focused on civil aspects and structural aspects. So we'll shift into the commissioning mode on that side as well. Next slide, please. So as part of the schedule delay, there is a demand for additional construction management services. And the purpose of this project update is really to inform the committee of a couple upcoming action items planned for March and April, which I'll highlight also on the next slide. But in terms of the construction management services amendment that's going to be upcoming, it's really made up of 3 parts. The bulk of it is for the time extension itself, the additional months that the project is going to be ongoing. Additional services are going to be required to support the project. So there's about 5 months of additional CM services all the way through that August completion date, and then an additional month for closeout services on the back end. The other 2 components, one is an added value. So as Boutier is our construction manager on the project, their services to date, their original budget is set to reach the end at the end of February. So through over the duration of the project, there's been some opportunities for added value with having an additional inspector on site. And at times we've leaned on this additional inspector specifically for things like T&M items to be able to track changes more accurately and provide potential cost savings to the district, as well as other items. But essentially it ended up being about a quarter of an extra body per time per month. And we intend to use the board authorized contingency to cover that aspect of the added value and the additional part-time on site. And then the third aspect is commissioning support services. Boutier's original proposal didn't include an electrical inspector on the back end of the project. However, we're looking to provide a little bit higher level of service than what they've additionally provided. As we're working through commissioning, we are seeing a lot of challenges, and on Veolia's side, Veolia is experiencing an increased number of turnover of staff with key institutional knowledge. So we're looking to bolster the CM team just a little bit, provide a little bit more electrical I&C inspection hours to help support the team also. I did just want to highlight some of the savings that the CM team has been able to help us provide. So one of the items I mentioned was a T&M instance. So there's a very large duct bank on site that travels down the main access road of the plant. We have a lot of our product pipelines and some other electrical duct banks. So there was a reroute of one of the planned duct banks required. The contractor provided a pretty large lump sum, rough order of magnitude. The project team, with guidance from district management, decided to go down the T&M path where we time and materials, we track each component of the work. And by doing that, a Boutier inspector is basically with them full time, overseeing the aspects of the work and reviewing time and material tickets. So it's about $75,000 in cost savings there. We're also able to install new control valves for the microfiltration feed system. These are just some additional scope of work beyond the original contract that we've been able to accomplish. We had a leaky sodium hypochlorite bulk tank. We were able to get that removed and set up. We also negotiated a couple credits, one on the paving side where there was some added value and value engineering, as well as a small sound wall that could be deleted. And then they also helped us negotiate a pretty significant credit on the Dominguez Street pipeline, which was planned to be in Shell's access road. And through some value engineering, we were able to move it into the planter and get about a $94,000 credit there. More examples of good QA/QC, things that they've caught that have been really helpful for the useful life of the project and overall quality. Happy to highlight any if needed. Next slide, please. As mentioned, I do
What
want to
slide are we-
highlight the
What number are we on?
Here we are on page.
Page 208.
Okay, I have that one here. Okay, thank you.
As mentioned, some of the upcoming, action items we plan to bring before the committee are an agreement amendment recommendation on the CM side. And then in April, a pretty small dollar amendment, but nonetheless wanted to preview it for the committee, was an agreement to our specialty inspection and materials testing agreement with Smith Emery. Based on the PLA, West Basin is to contract with a third-party testing firm for materials testing, things like compaction testing, concrete compression test results, rebar sampling, grout sampling, stainless steel welding inspection, things like that. So we have expended the budget on that end a little bit earlier than anticipated. The wet season and the rain didn't help. We did a round of compaction testing across the site that was unexpected. So there's been a few change conditions like that. So we plan to bring back a recommendation for an amendment there in about $30,000 range. In terms of the overall budget, the budget is projected to finish at the same dollar value, however, it being later. When we originally budgeted for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, we had included the full contingency of the construction contract. So that on the contractor side, we've utilized only a small portion, I think 25% of that construction contingency. So with the anticipated CM amendment, we anticipate the budget still falling in line, and with not utilizing the full contingency on the construction side, we anticipate the budget finishing just about the same place. So as you can see here, what we're projecting, the actuals are significantly delayed beyond what was originally projected, but with that spike in February that we're anticipating with the delivery of the units, and the extended project schedule, we do anticipate finishing at completion. On the financing side, I did just want to highlight a couple of things. There's a few different financing aspects of the project. We have a low interest loan from the State Water Resource Control Board and a Prop 1 grant, as well as a capital contribution from Cal Water. So in coordination with the finance department, I just wanted to update the board that we are preparing our first reimbursement request with the state. I think it's under review right now, and that'll be for $7.4 million for expenditures through June 2022. And right on the heels of that, we'll be submitting the request for costs through December 2022. Next slide, guys. And this is just a panoramic image of the site I wanted to share. Busy couple weeks on site with cranes and things like that, installing the CMF unit. So you can see the structure there is really taking shape. And we're excited to get into commission. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Director Williams.
Sounds exciting. I noticed that you really didn't take a big hit from the rain on those open trenches you had out there. Did not.
It may look like it did not, but we did.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah, we for some reason that actually the site drains right into the perimeter. So all of the entire perimeter was we kind of made a moat more or less. So we had to wait a number of days for the rainfall to percolate, then go back in and clean up and redo the compaction test.
You did. Okay, thanks.
Any questions? Director Deere, do you have any questions?
No, not this time, thanks.
Director Gray, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, I do have a couple of questions. Regarding the PLA and the employment of the different categories of laborers. It's not in the report, but I would appreciate knowing where the most of the PLA related hires come from. In other words, do they reside within the district or within LA County? And if in the district, do they reside in Division 1, Division 5, Division 3? Where are we getting most of the PLA related laborers from? So you probably don't have that, but if you could come back with that information.
I do have a little bit of that if you want me to.
Yes, if you have it, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can tell you, off my head, I think about 18% of that approved local is coming directly out of the West Basin service area. The other is out of LA County. The majority of the man hours being provided through the PLA, I believe, are out of Carson. Trying to think on which division that falls under. Division 1.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that of the total man hours on site, the bulk are being provided by laborers, followed by electricians and then carpenters.
Okay, but you said only about 18% of those man hours come from West Basin area and 82% from LA County. And of that 18%, the majority comes out of Division 1. As we move forward in the future with these types of agreements, one of the efforts of the PLA is obviously to employ and offer opportunities to individuals that are at risk, et cetera, and that have in the past not had opportunities to participate in this kind of work. But one of the other items that we should focus on is make that a priority for residents of West Basin first, and then Los Angeles County. It would be nice to know that some of the project labor hours are coming from divisions 2, 3, and 4, and 5, not just division 1, that it was spread out a little bit more. And it seems like there was ample opportunity to do that since 82% of the hours are coming from LA County. Moving forward, it'd be good to work with the contractors so they're more focused in recruiting some of this help within the West Basin boundaries. We do have other areas besides Carson's that would be very beneficial, would been good beneficiaries of this type of opportunities. And you think of Division 2 and Division 4, yeah.
I can, I'll highlight for you how we currently utilize the process. So there's a labor craft request form that we have. So that's provided to the contractor. And when the contractor is looking to add someone to their crew on site, they take that craft request form and they give it to the union halls. So then the union halls on that craft request form includes our list of zip codes. So we always say, these are the zip codes we're looking for. And if workers from whichever union, maybe whether it be the laborers, the carpenters, or the electricians, if they have bodies available that reside in those zip codes, they give it to us. And that's why you see the difference between the 18% and the approved, which was 34%. The 34%, the 16% delta is those that we requested for, but unfortunately weren't available.
You can work with the unions, like if you work with the laborers and so on, and they can do more outreach within some of our more disadvantaged service communities within the West Basin. And I think that would be more beneficial and more of the intent of what we're trying to accomplish.
Understood.
Here.
The other item I just wanted some clarification on is the additional budget for the CM services. And I guess you'll be bringing that back to us next month for review and consideration. In terms of the budget, you also showed towards the end that we're still going to be within budget. So when we're looking to add additional budget to the CM services, is that going to be within the overall budget, or will that then bump us up so that your projection line may change? Or it's anticipated that it's within all the contingencies that are in that?
Yeah, it's anticipated that it will fall within the overall approved project budget. At this time, though, we are doing the budgeting process for 23-24. We have not modified the contingency on the construction side, but we are projecting that it's going to fall within the overall previously approved. with.
So we don't need to come back and ask for any more money.
Clarify what Kevin said. We anticipate the CM services. We do have to come back and ask for money for CM services, but that won't be, right now, we don't anticipate that to be, to add to the overall project budget.
And that kind of was what I was asking clarification. So the overall budget has right now contingencies in it, so it's within that range of contingencies that you will increase the CM services. In terms of the change orders, you have at least a couple that we can see on some T&M work in here for 450,000.
For Director Alvarez, the CM services, we do expect that to go above the contingency approved by the board for the CM services,
Not for,
but not for the overall. Okay.
as long as the overall budget stays in, that's a good thing, and that's kind of what we should aim for. Obviously, within that overall budget, some things go over the line and some under the line. In terms of the construction contract, there's at least that one change order. Are there gonna be, are there some potential risks out there that we haven't seen yet, that you might start looking at, or are we gonna be still fine in terms of that budget?
Yeah, what we're projecting is we're gonna be underneath the previously approved construction contingency. So most of the risks are behind us now that we're out of the ground. But there are still some challenges with commissioning that could pop up. So we do have some remaining contingency still for that. But I think we're through most of the big hurdles for the project.
Okay. So when you bring this back next month, if we can have a more robust presentation of all of those costs, so to show that we're still within the overall budget. And will be, notwithstanding that different line items underneath that are up or down. But when you look at the whole picture, it still looks like it's on budget. And obviously, we're now schedule-wise beyond our original estimated completion for the project. Do you estimate beyond what you kind of alluded to in this presentation, further extensions in the schedule?
No, I mean, it is a best projection to date. All of the equipment that's needed has been ordered, so we have delivery dates. If things change from when we're expecting them, there could be further delays, or if we run into challenges during commissioning that require us to maybe procure different items or different equipment. But there's a little bit of float in there. So right now, the project team is confident in the August completion date.
When you get to the instrumentation and control section of this, and you mentioned that you're gonna have the CM bring in some additional help. Mission control system. So on that, has that been an area that's been problematic? I ask my experience is that every time you get to the last point where you have to integrate a new system into an existing control system, et cetera, that tends to be where you find out you have some issues, et cetera. So anticipate that the reason that I'm saying they're gonna bring in a new specialist is because this is an area of concern.
Maybe not. It is an area of concern. It's more of a challenge. It's always a challenge on our projects. I'm leaning on my experience from the Hyperion Pump Station. Integrating into our DCS is a challenge, and making sure that all the bugs are worked out and all the controls properly work. Doing a lot of rounds of testing with limiting the operational impacts. So I'd say more of a challenge than a concern, but it's something we're trying to be as prepared for.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Any other questions from any of the board members?
Well, thank you.
Right, so then we will move on to the next item, which is the Title 22 update.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the next item, 6C, begins in your packet on page 212. For this presentation, we do have Jamie Burkhart, a water quality and environmental compliance analyst 2. We also have Uzi Daniel, our manager of operations, here virtually. So Jamie, take it away.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, directors. I'm here today to present 6C, the information item on page 212 of your packets. Engineering reports, just to give you a little background information, are required per the Title 22 requirements for the production, distribution, and use of recycled water. West Basin has two main programmatic engineering reports. One is for the West Coast Basin Barrier Project, and the other is for the Title 22 Disinfected Tertiary Recycled Water Program, DT 22, which is commonly called the Purple Pipe Program. Recycled water program engineering reports are required for new permits, permit revisions, when changes occur in the treatment process or in the quantity of the production volume of water, and any other items at the discretion of the Division of Drinking Water and the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board. Site-specific engineering reports, on the other hand, are required by DPW and the County Department of Public Health, DPH. They are typically required for any use other than irrigation or previously unpermitted uses. And again, at the discretion of DPW or DPH. This memo is focused on the DT 22 programmatic engineering report. The graphic in your board packets shows the West Basin's history with the Title 22 permit and the corresponding engineering reports. Engineering report guidelines were issued by DDW in 2001 and are still referenced today, as you can see in attachment A. They are required to be prepared under the guidance of and stamped by a California licensed professional engineer. And as I stated before, the reports are required when there's changes in the treatment process, changes in the types of recycled water uses, expansions, new or renewed permits, or any other items at the discretion of the regulators. In 2016, the state finalized a new general permit for recycled water. The regulators were asked to enroll both new and existing recycled water producers into this new permit within 5 years. The Regional Water Quality Control Board staff requested that West Basin provide a timeline for enrolling, and West Basin noted to their regulatory staff that we had a goal of 2020. Because of the staffing limitations on both the West Basin side and the regulatory side, the pandemic, and the fact that there were actually no changes to the existing treatment processes or volume of water, West Basin was granted verbal flexibility to delay the enrollment in the new permit. West Basin anticipated updating the 2013 engineering report when required to enroll under the new permit. Operations and compliance staff drafted a preliminary report in early 2022 to prepare for enrollment in the new general permit by 2023 in July. West Basin recently engaged in an expedited effort to add a recycled water filling station at the treatment plant. So staff accelerated efforts to update the Title 22 program engineering report to avoid project delays should it be a condition of the filling station approval. Because of the board's desire to realize this project expeditiously, staff did not want to approach the finish line of the fill station project only to have it put on hold or even rejected because there was not a more current corresponding programmatic engineering report. Staff wanted to ensure the least amount of delay if the programmatic engineering report or new permit enrollment were triggered by the fill station project. November 2022, the engineering team, the West Basin engineering team, engaged consultants to design the fill station and prepare the site-specific engineering report, as well as to complete the Title 22 program engineering report when needed. Staff has scheduled a meeting with regulators at their first available time, which is March 2023, to discuss the fill station, and an update will be provided to the board at that time. Staff's intention is to get permission for the fill station with the site-specific engineering report with an agreement, if necessary, that the Title 22 program engineering report will be submitted at a later date. The fill station project timeline and updates, including the permitting schedule and requirements, are included in a separate monthly board memo. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Director Williams,
No, thank you.
Director Deere, any questions?
No, thank you.
Director Gray? Okay. A lot of this, I think, was initiated earlier than when we requested the filling station, if I understood your comments properly.
Yes, that's correct. Staff had been working on preparing a draft report.
Okay, so that was kind of a separate project that was underway. And then on September 2nd, we requested that we get a filling station online as quickly as possible.
Correct.
And the filling station requires its own separate report. It goes to DDW and then goes to once they sign off, we go to the regional board as part of the fact that we operate a recycled water system.
EPH, yes.
I guess I don't quite understand why these two have to be so intertied. And we'll talk about the filling station report in the next information item, but the presentation that you made was part of the justification for the filling station report being delayed is that this report needs to be completed. And did I misunderstand that?
Yes. Okay.
So can you clarify
I
why?
believe that the fill station report is being delayed.
Well, not that it's being delayed, that it's submittal needs to have this in place.
May I step in here for a second? The fill station engineering report is not being delayed by this permit. What our intention was to assure that this permit did not need to be updated. And we started updating the permit in tandem with the fill station engineering report. So if this became an issue with the regulator, they didn't put the brakes on the fill station.
I could add to that. I would say any questions about combining them, I understand that's a source of concern. The reason that they're bundled is because they are related. The site supplemental engineer report is related to the program engineer report. The fill station is not currently a permitted use under our current Title 22 permit. I think we all can appreciate the desire to conserve the potable water with the fill station, but the regulatory process is already in place and still needs to be followed. So I do want to reiterate that staff's goal in connecting these two projects was purely to ensure the least amount of delay if the programmatic engineering report or the new permit enrollment was triggered by the fill station project, because as I stated, it is not currently a permitted use in our permit.
And but the reality is that we asked for something on September 2nd that should have been a high priority item, especially in light of the drought. And we're now in February, and that still seems a long ways away. Anyways, it's just my comments. I think I'll add additional comments when you make the next presentation. So let's move on to the recycled water fill station update.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. That item is identified as 6D. And for this presentation, we do have our project manager, Camille Castillo, and I believe she is here virtually. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee and Chairman Alvarez. I will like to push to page 295 to go over the presentation for today's fill station update and to provide you a little bit on what has been done since I think the last time I presented was in December of 2022. So both of it's on page 295, I believe, of the packet. So both components of the fill station project, one consisting of the permitting, as Jamie was speaking to, has been ongoing. We are working with our consultant for them to provide the supplemental engineering report draft. And so that recently has been provided as of February 6th. And then they are also working on the next draft of it. But for the supplemental engineering report to be submitted, we do require 70% design plans of the proposed recycle water fill station. So that is one reason why the schedule is getting pushed, as well as choosing the site that we want to have the fill station located at within ECL. And progress has been made with the feasibility analysis, which is composed of the technical memorandum 1 and technical memorandum 2. So our consultant for that, Tetra Tech, has provided the first draft, which was included as part of this attachment. And we were able to have a comment workshop where we discussed our staff comments with the consultant, who was able to apply those comments to another draft of the technical memorandum. And due to our conversations with the consultant, we decided to have one more iteration of this technical memorandum. So the second draft of the technical memorandum was submitted last week. And the final iteration of that technical memorandum will be finalized by the end of this month. And so we're still, according to the schedule, we're still going along at the same pace. And so if you jump to page 296, I will go into a little bit more of a highlight of the draft technical memorandum 1. And I do want to mention that it is still in draft version, so it's not been finalized. But the point of this draft technical memo was to have the consultant look at the various sites that we can have the fill station that are located within ECL, and to consider the hydraulic capacity of each of these sites. And so they provided 2 alternative hydraulic assessments. The first assessment was looking at connecting directly to the existing irrigation system. And so on the figure, you'll see the 3 sites that they looked at. There is site 1 is at the northeast parking lot, which is along PCH and Hughes Way. And I do want to note that this parking lot is owned by the city of El Segundo. And the second site was located at the west parking lot of the ECL Visitor Center. And the third was in the east parking lot. And so the consultant looked at the existing irrigation system, and most of the pipelines were in a range of 1-inch to 2-inch pipelines. And they were able to determine how much flow rate would be able to be accessed. And then they also looked at the design needs of the fill station. So we highlighted that there needs to be 2 parking spots available for each of the hose dispensers. There needs to be a locking valve to shut off all the recycled water. And there needs to be recycled water identification tags and signs, as well as for the personnel working the fill station, there needs to be access to restrooms. And luckily at ECL, there is the visitor center restroom that is available, and there needs to be access to the hand washing station. So if for some reason this bathroom or the restrooms are not available, there would have to be a separate potable chemical station or hand washing station or even hand sanitizer. And lastly, something that was noted in the report is sun protection. So if this is operated during the summer, there needs to be some sort of shade available for the staff personnel that is working the fill station. And so on the next page, 297 in your pocket, you'll see the second hydraulic assessment alternative that the consultant looked at, and that is connecting to a new meter and that would connect to the 8-inch recycled water main that's located on Hughes Way. And the purpose of looking at this is, for some reason, we cannot connect to the existing irrigation system, or we need to have a separate meter in order to keep track and report to the regulatory agencies of how much water is being spent or used. And so in this second assessment, we looked at the same locations, but this time each would be connected to a new 2-inch meter. And that would also either have a 4-inch pipeline that connects to the 8-inch recycled water main, or a 2-inch pipeline that connects to the same 8-inch recycled water main. And that would be at site 2 and site 3. And so another aspect of this tech memo was looking at the operation and maintenance requirements for West Basin. And so that would mean a minimum of 2 staff members, and we would want the storage and storage of the hoses and valves to be in a hidden location, and that is just to prevent any kind of theft or graffiti. And we would need to train all customers, and so that comes with the materials that's needed in order to make sure each of the customer agrees and is trained on what can be used, where the recycled water can be used once they have taken it off site. And so this just provides a brief overview of the draft tech memo. And like I said, we have another iteration that included comments that we wanted to provide. And we'll be looking at a potential of hooking up at Site 3 to the existing irrigation system, like to a quick coupler. So that will be another potential recommendation. So hopefully by the end of the month, we'll have the site chosen and where exactly we want to place it. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Okay, Director Williams.
I have no questions. I just want to make a comment. I had no idea that it would take this kind of an effort to do a seemingly simple, straightforward thing, but I know you have no control over it. It's called red tape, I guess. Thank you, but you guys doing a great job. I appreciate it.
Director Gray, do you have any comments? Director Deere?
No comments.
Okay. My comments kind of follow up, I think, with what I alluded to on the previous update that we received on the Title 22 report. This is a pretty straightforward, and should have been a pretty straightforward item to execute. I looked at all of this and I understand the regulatory requirements. I think I understand them pretty well. I think that what we've done is kind of an overkill on trying to address this. The whole intent was it should have been pretty simple and straightforward, something that we could bring to service relatively quickly and not to continue to elongate it, et cetera. I see that we've gone through an awful lot of work. But my concern is that if we ever need to get anything done and there is no sense of urgency in terms of getting this type of thing done, this should have been a pretty minimal approach. Yes, there is the transfer of the report from DDW to the regional board. Could have, and they could have held it up and more than likely would have said, if you're updating your Title 22 report, please include this in the Title 22 report. At least that opportunity would have been something that would have been available, and this could have been, should have been, I think, up to fruition much quicker than it is. We are where we are. Hopefully this will move forward now that you've got all these draft technical memorandums, et cetera, on a slightly quicker basis, finalize the report, get them submitted, and get this service in place. With that, we'll move on to the.
If I may comment, Director Alvarez, may I have a comment?
You can make a comment, yes.
I'd just like to say, my opinion, plenty of sense of urgency in our staff here at West Basin in anything that we do. But respectfully disagree with your opinion, and we're proud of the work that staff is doing.
So with that, we'll move on to the next item, which is the monthly operations report.
Mr. Chairman, the item that you've asked for is item 6E. That is our monthly operations report. We do have Susanna Lee, our senior operations engineer, here for this presentation. But we also have Frank Fuchs, our operations supervisor, attending virtually to support this item.
Afternoon, directors. And turn to the presentation. Our understanding was this was supposed to be received and filed, so I apologize. We can turn to the presentation.
Yeah, then maybe I could say a couple of words. So traditionally, what we've done with the engineering and operations updates is do a presentation. I think a request came in to maybe change the format more into a submittal of a report. And so you may see somewhat of a little different references in. We still have graphics and tables and so on and so forth, and we can go through them at the request of the board. we can, Chairman, we can skip through them unless there's a particular question on the area, but at the direction of the board, we can go through it as in a presentation format or just straightforward answer questions.
Any of the directors have any comments on that?
Can bring a couple highlights,
Yeah.
mainly on the water quality, is that we've been receiving very substandard quality from Hyperion. As you recall, like during our 2021 upset, we were seeing upward of hundreds of NTU coming into the plant. We were receiving a few instances about 100 NTU into the plant. What that did to affect our performance at our plant with all the membrane, because our membrane design is designed at 20 NTUs at most. And so for the whole of January through currently this month, all through this month, we're seeing about 30 NTU on the average. So that's just on the average. We've seen much higher for weeks and on. And so it does impact our production. Our barrier production was reduced, as well as cell-like productions were impacted, and we had to supplement with potable water because our membrane system are not able to keep up with the water quality that's coming in from Hyperion. Highlight that I want the board to be aware of.
For the question, we did talk about trying to get these things through because just to keep these meetings on time and so on. And that the updates, which are, and this is a very important update, that they be made a little bit more succinct. And we appreciate that. In this case, I think a couple of new graphs, such as this one, are very beneficial. One of the items that I've always come back to at the end of these presentations, what is our actual production? And that's not very well covered. So I kind of alluded to that just in your summary, Susanna, just now. But it's not one of the slides that we have today, but that would be something that would really, where are we in terms of what are the issues? This would be this type of a graph. And then where are we in terms of real production, in terms of recycled water? Are we meeting our goals? Are we underproducing or are we overproducing recycled water? And because that impacts, what we can say about our contribution to the use of imported water.
Alvarez, we can certainly add those graphs in. We do go through precisely that discussion in our FNA meetings, but we're happy to include those graphs and numbers as well in the engineering and operations as well.
All right, so didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead and finish up, Susanna. You always do a good job.
Like to go through the rest of
Sure.
the slides or the attachment, I suppose. So as I finish discussing about the water quality, been seeing ability to be impacted, as well as higher total solids, suspended solids, which in the next slide, attachment A2. We were currently, actually for February, we're seeing even higher average suspended solids. So for January it was average to 30 ppm. For month of February, so right now is we're seeing up to 46 ppm. So what these water quality and the turbidity and suspended solid does to the membrane is that it brings a lot of fouling, so which end up requiring a lot of pinning activities. So that would take a unit down. That means reduce reproduction. And at the satellite facility, the CEMS is being constructed. So Hopefully by August, we will not be impacted as much because the satellite facility MF is still with the polypropylene membranes. They are not as easily clean. And so that takes a lot more efforts to be clean and pinned. So that these water quality has been impacted, Torrance specifically, and we have to result in swinging elbows a few times and resulted in a lot less recycled water sales at Torrance. Moving on to the next slide, or attachment A3, that's just highlights of some of the maintenance activities. We had to change out filter 9, disinfect the tertiary filter 9 actuator, one of the valve, so that kept filter 9 offline. So I'm pleased to report that work is completed and filter 9 is back online. And then there's just a few other items that safety related that we have to perform January. Move on to the next attachment A4. This is the environmental compliance report. We performed a total of 422 samples, and those are the 3 reports that were submitted to the different regulatory agencies. I think I'll turn it over to Frank.
Good afternoon, directors. Next slide, please. This is our monthly potable water customer service update. I just wanted to highlight for the Metropolitan Water District customer projects and shutdowns, WB 32, which is in the Cal Water Service area, is affected by a shutdown that's ongoing by Metropolitan Water District. That'll remain out of service until May 14th. And then for the Title 22 Purveyor Service Program, the first quarter sampling has been scheduled for that work. Moving on to the next slide, please. And this is just our monthly recycled water distribution system activities. The table just highlights again the main activities that are implemented by Infomark, our distribution operator. Next slide, please. And then for customers, we wanted to highlight, this is just one of the customers that we're currently working with to, that are making modifications to their recycled water system. This is Northrop Grumman in Redondo Beach. They had already been connected to recycled water. They had been using recycled water for their cooling towers. They recently expanded the use to include a portion of their irrigation. This is the first phase out of 3. And they also included 1 additional cooling tower. So they've already started increasing their use of recycled water to irrigation and an additional cooling tower. And the additional 2 phases, which we anticipate will be completed this year, will include an additional area of their landscaping and 1 more cooling tower. Next slide, please. And then this is just to highlight one of the many sites that we're working with to provide support during the modification process. This is a park in Torrance, Entradero Park, and they're currently going through a project to modify their landscape, and they're expanding their irrigation system to a section of the park. And so we've been working with the Department of Public Health and the city to make sure that all those areas that are being constructed are approved by the Department of Public Health. So that concludes our report, and happy to answer any questions.
Question.
Director Williams, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm kind of a maintenance man, old public works director. And whenever I see rust on, go back to slide, page 3, row 6. See that? That's unsightly. Is there anything that we can do to get rid of that rust?
This is
We had
you're
that-
referring.
No?
You're referring to the photo on the left, Director Williams? Of
Yes.
Yeah, that
Yes.
that's the cooling tower that is owned by Northrop.
And
Not our-
So,
Not ours, but we
yeah, it's not,
can.
it's,
We have influence. Tell them that that doesn't look good. This says reclaim water. No one, they see us. Public reads that, they see us.
I'll bring that up to their maintenance staff director.
You know them?
Yes, we
Please
work
do.
with them. We work with them closely on these expansions.
Okay, very good. We'll take care of that. I'd appreciate it.
Okay, any other comments? Director Deere
No, thank you.
and Director Gray? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the monthly engineering update report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the final item on our information calendar. And for this, we do have our manager of engineering, Wendell Johnson.
Thank you, EJ, and good afternoon, board members. If you could turn to page 313 in your agenda packet. Okay, and we're presenting a new format for the engineer monthly update. And what I have before us is that is a summary of staff reports that were provided. And this included the recycled water fill station, the update on JMM Parsons, phase 2 expansion, as well as the Palos Verdes recycled water pipeline. Okay, and we've attached to this report the finance or the where we are when it comes to the budget and what is being spent. Those are the usual attachments that you see with some statuses, highlighted statuses for the billing cycle. These are the numbers through to the end of the year of 2022. Okay, in addition, in this report, you will find that there's other highlighted tasks that the engineering department is performing. The first highlighted task is that we've been working with Caltrans, both on the operations side, Frank and my department, on a expansion of the 405 where they're installing some auxiliary lanes along in the South Bay. This is a project, I don't know if you remember, Director Williams, but it's been kicking around a long time in MTA to actually get the project done. And so we've been providing some preliminary information and sitting in and providing them with feedback with the engineering. And one of the bridges that they're doing the expansion on conflicts with one of our pipelines that are there. And so we've gone back and forth with the different types of foundations that are available, and what we feel that will be presented in the next fiscal year CIP budget will be a budget for encasing the pipeline in a steel casing. It went from a relocation of 15 feet to our ability to encase the project, which will have the minimum impact on the agency. So we're a lot of work and effort. I want to especially thank Orlando for his work and effort, as well as Frank on that particular item. Good infrastructure projects, we always hit roadblocks in the project. And one of the roadblocks that we hit in the Title 22 converted filter booster pump station this month is that we didn't have the ability to actually shut down the line completely so that they could do the tie-in of the pump station. We've resolved that issue by making a change order for a installation of a stop in the line so that we're able to cut off the flow of water completely. It's a minor change order, about $32,000. We have still approximately 150,000 or 150,000 remaining in the contingency for the project. We haven't really used a lot of contingency. We had issues with a leak pipe on that project that flooded the trench. We spent maybe about $7,000 or $8,000 on that, and also some issues with some concrete. So we still have the bulk of the contingencies remaining on the project, and the project is expected to be completed within the contract days as well as within the budget. Update on the Title 22 filter 7 and 8 structural repair. We received the bids on July 17th. On July 17th, all of the bids were rejected. Okay, and that was for the structural improvement of the filters 7 and 8. We will be coming back to the E&O with we were directed by the committee to come up with a plan to address the cracks in the concrete and the leaking. And we will be coming back to the committee in the very near future on what that plan was. As the board has always encouraged us to do reach out for both consultants as well as contractors, and 3 of our staff members attended Networks. This was held in the city of Carson on February 2nd, where we provided information to the contractors and consultants that were attending on how to do business with the West Basin. Also, what was included was a URL card, one of those fancy signals where you can actually scan with your phone, and it will open up our website to the page where our bids are advertised or solicitations are announced. That concludes my update. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Director Williams.
No, thank you.
Director Deere.
Yes, everything seems in good order. Thank you.
Director Gray. Okay, for the time being, I don't have any other questions. May I have some comments on the revised presentation that you've made, but for today, thank you very much. Meeting under 2 hours. The goal.
What?
The goal.
All right.
So, thank you for that. So the next item we have is closed session, which we don't have one. Director's comments for future agenda items. Director Williams,
Done at the time.
Director Deere,
This particular department, the departments we're discussing today seem very competent and very, very professional, and very proud of them.
thank you.
Thank you.
And Director Gray. Okay, and I don't have any additional comments. Next up is adjournment, but before we go to adjournment, next scheduled meeting right now is for March 8th. I'm gonna have a conflict on March 8th, so maybe moving that meeting to the 15th or the 16th. And I'll confirm that.
Let's see what happens.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn, I did want to acknowledge staff. Obviously, we have a number of people here with us in person today for live presentations, but we also have a number of staff members that have joined virtually. As you know, West Basin does utilize a 980 schedule. So a number of our staff members, this is their dark day. So I do want to acknowledge that and say thank you to everybody for being here.
Thank you for pointing that out, and thank you for those individuals that participated today on the dark day. Okay, with that, we're adjourned.
Goodbye.